Now that we've keyed the weatherman over the weather map, it's time to continue the compositing process by adding all the little graphics that are going to help to tell the story of the weather report. The first thing we should do is come down here to the timeline and adjust our layers. First thing I like to do is be able to see the audio. So let's put our cursor in between audio track 1 and audio track 2. We'll get the double-headed arrow and click and drag. You can also use the wheel on your mouse to do this. We also want to see more of the video tracks. So let's put our cursor in between V1 and A1, or the audio and the video. You'll see a thicker line there. Put your cursor there until you get the double-headed arrow and click and drag down. We want to drag down so that we can continue to see the audio waveforms, but give us the maximum space up here. If you've got your tracks expanded, so let's say I've gone here to the wrench and I've gone expand all tracks, this isn't going to give you any room. So let's collapse those. So you can go to the wrench and minimize all tracks. That way we have room up here to do our compositing. How do you add a track? Simple. The first way I'm going to show you is to right-click, Add Track, and that'll simply add a single video track for me to work with. The first graphic that we're going to composite is our Brain Buffet logo. So let's drag and drop that up here onto track 3. If you scrub through it, you'll notice that at the beginning it jumps off. So let's just trim that back a little, shove it over to the left, and test it again. Yes, we get to see it the entire time. Excellent. I want this to last the entire time. If I put my cursor here at the end and try pulling it out, it won't work because it's handling it like a video clip. So let's grab the Rate Stretch tool and let's pull it out. It should snap to the end, and now we should have the Brain Buffet logo the entire time. What's the issue? It's too big. Let's go back to the Selection tool. And to resize, there's a couple different ways. First, we could go up here to Motion and play around with the scale. So if I start scrubbing this, you'll notice that it resizes. And since I have uniform checked, it's not going to distort. You definitely want that. You don't want to distort a company's logo. You can also come out here to the Program Monitor, though, and double-click. Most people find this very intuitive. This allows me to grab the size handles and resize it that way. We want to move it to the corner here, but be careful not to move the anchor point. What is the anchor point? The anchor point is where the object is going to rotate around. So for example, if I rotate this now, there we go. I moved my cursor until I get the rotation tool. See how it's rotating around there? I didn't want to do that, so let me Control Z a couple times. That's the anchor point. So be careful when you're moving your logo down to the corner here that you don't accidentally move the anchor point. That's still a little too big, so let's resize it. You could also play around with the opacity here if you're feeling like this is a little hard to handle. It's too there. I want to get semi-transparent. You can always come up here to the opacity and slide this opacity down just a little. Fade it out. That's looking good. The next thing we want to do is we want this to come flying on. So let's talk about keyframing, because that's pretty fun and it's a good skill to have. Let's say I want this. Let me expand my audio tracks a little. I put my cursor down here and use my wheel. I think when I minimized all of them, it minimized the audio tracks as well. So I want to be able to see that. So I want the weather bug to come flying on here and end right about there when I get done with my first little intro. With my logo selected, I'm going to come back up here and we're going to do some keyframing. Keyframing is a cool tool to have in your toolbox. I like to start my keyframing where I want the object to end. So that's why I moved my current time indicator to the spot where I want the bug to finish, where I want it to land. I'm going to want to change the position. So I'm going to set a keyframe right here for the position and for the rotation. So I'm going to rotate it on as it's flying across. So I've set my keyframes. That's where it's going to land. Now I'm going to scrub back to the beginning and I'm going to move it and rotate it. You can physically come up here to the Program Monitor and click and drag it off. If I want to play it back, you can see it comes flying on. Now I want to set the rotation. I want to set the rotation exactly where this keyframe is. So see these little diamonds? They let you move back and forth between your keyframes. So I'm back to the beginning. It's scrubbed off, and I'm going to play around with the rotation. I set a keyframe, and I'm going to scrub this number. See how I'm scrubbing it, and it's rotating around. As I move on here, it's rotating. Now you can see it's rotating. It doesn't really make sense to be rotating that direction. I actually want it to be rotating the other direction. Instead of a positive number, I'm going to click on this and make it a negative number. That's the opposite. So I'm going to just put a minus in front of the number. And now as I scrub through it, you can see it's rolling on in the right direction. At any time, if you think, I want to change those, just use the arrows to go to those different keyframes, and you can scrub this right or left and just give it more rotation or less rotation. Let me play that back. Okay, that's a little slow for me. So if you want to change the speed, you can marquee select both of these by clicking and dragging around them, and then just shift it to the left or right. When I shift it to the left, it speeds up because it has less time to do that move. So let's try that now. It looks good. So if you want to slow things down or speed things up, just move those. You can also adjust the time it takes to slow down. So you can see now, if I play this again, it travels across here on a uniform speed. If I want it to slow down when it gets to the end, right click on a keyframe and come here to temporal interpolation. And this allows you to control the speed that it decelerates or accelerates. The Bezier handles will let you control it manually. The easing in will do it automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and ease this in. And you'll notice that my keyframe turns from a diamond into this little hourglass shape. And let's try watching it again. And it just slows down like it put the brakes on a car, which is nice.